What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Photo Finish, Scott Radio's home for motorsports in general and NASCAR in particular. I'm your host, Ben Schneider, joined once again by Matt Cole.
Good to be back. I know we've been on a little bit of a hiatus here, so it's good to be kind of back in the driver's seat, no pun intended, and I look forward to breaking everything down with you tonight.
Yeah, so no show the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Campus was virtually shut down for the break by then. And no show last week. Matt had a lecture to attend, and I didn't want to do the show alone and not give him a chance to comment on Homestead and everything. So we have a lot to cover. Homestead happened, F1 at Abu Dhabi happened, the seat swap with Johnson and Alonso happened, tons of silly season news has happened, Will Smith happened, of all people, and something else major just broke, and we only have a 30-minute show, so I just want to jump right into it. But first, we have news that literally broke within the last half hour, like 20, 25 minutes ago. Bob Pockrass of ESPN, although not for much longer, and we'll get to that in a second as well. But he's reporting via Twitter that Spire Sports Entertainment, an agency that has worked with sponsors and drivers, has confirmed that they have bought Furniture Row Racing's charter, and they will operate a race team with the number 77. Driver and alliance details are to be determined.
I mean, when we were looking at it too, I haven't heard of Spire Sports. Have you?
I hadn't either.
I'm trying to pull some stuff up right now to kind of catch up on that. They're based out of Cornelius, North Carolina.
My good friend William Soki from Twitter and from Last Car says that they're the ones Brennan Poole sued when he was going through his sponsorship woes or whatever was going on with him.
Huh.
But this was totally unexpected. I don't think anybody saw this coming, and we don't know very much right now, obviously. Dustin Long has also reported on this, and he believes they will be a Chevy team. But yeah, very little detail so far.
Yeah, just the fact that Spire Sports is the one who's taken over here. But I agree. I'm not sure where I land on this. I think it's good that someone has decided to take over Furniture Row's charter, but I guess
figured
we'll
it
see.
would. I figured it would be an existing team, like Premium Motorsports have one charter, they have a second car, so maybe
Yeah.
they'd be interested in buying a charter for that second car. They run Toyotas sometimes. Maybe they could get some TRD development as well. But this is a sponsorship agency operating a whole brand new team with a charter that just competed for championships 3 of the last 4 years at Homestead.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And ironically enough, as far as I can tell, the first person to break this news was Bob Pockrass, who announced earlier this weekend that he is, in his words, a free agent for 2019 because ESPN has laid him off.
It's disappointing to see and look at, and we've talked a lot about it, just the fact that I guess ESPN really doesn't want to invest a lot of coverage into NASCAR anymore if they're losing interest, if it's, what we've been talking about all semester is, monetary reasons, financial reasons. But it's tough to see someone who's such a genuine, authentic journalist kind of get the axe here. And he's, like you said, he's laid off, but I think we can all kind of not assume, but understand where this is headed, and it's sad.
Yeah, well, a lot of younger fans today might not realize that in the 90s when ESPN2 was being launched, and of course ESPN2 is almost indistinguishable from ESPN today, but back then it was like an extreme sports kind of network geared at the younger audience. So they had, motocross and BMX and X Games and a lot of motor racing. That was the bulk of their content. And ESPN Speed World with Bob Jenkins and all sorts of people, that was your destination place. It was almost like a Speed Vision before Speed Vision was even around. Of course, that became Speed Channel, and Speed and today is no longer around either. It's FS1. But yeah, just ESPN lost the NASCAR rights at the end of 2000 when new TV deals came in, and Fox and NBC took over. And then they got back into it from 2007 to 2014. And then the new deals came along, and ESPN lost the NASCAR rights again. And I feel like slowly but surely, ever since that happened, we've seen a major decrease in their NASCAR coverage and motorsports coverage in general. If you look at their IndyCar coverage, they had the whole IndyCar schedule up until 2008, lost that, and it was pretty evident looking at their broadcasts that, Alan Bestwick's great, and I have tremendous respect for him, and he's a fantastic play-by-play guy, but he can only do so much. It was pretty clear that he was one of, if not the only person on the staff at ESPN that was really putting any sort of effort into the IndyCar production. And of course, you may say, well, they have the F1 rights now. Well, the F1 rights are just a simulcast of Sky Sports over in the UK. So it's not like ESPN. I mean, you have Nicole Briscoe doing the lead out after every race, but the bulk of it is Sky Sports.
Yeah. I don't know, Ben. I don't know. It's troubling to see what's happened here.
I can count 3 people left on the payroll. I guess 4. 4 people left on the payroll at ESPN that have anything to do with NASCAR right now. That's Nicole Briscoe, or motor racing rather. Nicole Briscoe, Ryan McGee, Marty Smith, and those 2 are mostly doing college football these days. And
Sure.
Ricky Craven, who's a former driver.
Yeah.
That's it. You think of how many people it takes to put together a production for airing NASCAR races, which they were doing not even 4 years ago, and where their coverage is today. It's kind of interesting to see how the worldwide leader in sports, as they claim to be, is devoting so little coverage to the sport of motor racing.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at, what's going on here with Bob and stuff, you said that when you found that tweet, whether or not he was the first one to actually break the news, it was the first to pop up in your feed.
Yeah, and that's just proof. Bob is a very highly regarded, respected journalist and considered by many to be the best in the business.
Mm.
And Matt, I actually want to get your opinion on this. We were supposed to have Chase Strauss joining us as well, another hockey enthusiast, but he had something come up at the last minute. He couldn't make it. But Matt, you're a pretty big hockey fan.
Yeah.
ESPN has kind of done the same thing with hockey ever since they lost the rights to the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
You think of how little it's brought up on First Take, other shows like that. Do you see any sort of parallel here
yeah, I do. And as far as hockey in general, they don't cover much of the NHL. They cover the Frozen Four for college hockey, which is, the semifinals and the national championship. Other than that, there's no coverage. I can't remember the last time. I went to ESPN to check the scores for hockey, and it seems that NASCAR's getting stuck in this same vicious cycle. And it's like they're getting rid of all the sports, and it's kind of narrowed down to just football, basketball, baseball,
a little bit of baseball,
little bit,
even.
And
yeah,
that's it.
I think ESPN's in a lot of trouble.
I do too. And
and when I think of it this way, like as a kid, I watched SportsCenter every morning.
Mm-hmm.
I watched Sports Nation every afternoon, Around the Horn, PTI. All those shows were part of my childhood growing up.
Yeah,
I made sure I tried to watch them almost every day, and I maybe watch those kinds of shows once a month, if that. These days, it's not must-see television for me anymore.
No.
The only show I still kind of paid a little bit of attention to is First Take.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think that can get pretty entertaining, especially when Will Kane's on, because he brings a different perspective, I think, than Stephen A. and Max.
Which is good.
But,
I mean, we could talk for another hour on that alone.
Yeah, I do want to move away from this eventually, but yeah, very, very disappointing. I think ESPN's making a big mistake, and I just saw a hashtag here on Twitter. It says, "Find a job for Bob." So I don't know. Maybe we can start trying to get that trending. Because if Bob Pockrass isn't covering NASCAR races next year, that's going to be a tremendous loss. Not just for motor racing journalism, but for journalism, period.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right.
All right. So we have a chance now, being back in the studio. I know it seems like ages ago at this point, but let's talk about the Homestead weekend of the NASCAR championship. So we'll start with the truck race since it was first. And this was a very clean race. The only 2 cautions throughout the race were for the stage breaks.
Mm-hmm.
And, when stages were introduced, I always thought, okay, I don't love the idea, but I'd like it better if you awarded points but didn't throw the caution.
Yeah.
Because when you throw the caution, it's like, okay, now we know when the yellows are coming out. Now we can plan our strategy around that. Whereas if it stays green, you award the bonus points, okay, that's kind of gimmicky, but at least you don't interrupt the racing.
Exactly.
So it would have been very interesting for me to see, and last year's Homestead races were pretty clean too. If there weren't stage breaks, how would the race have planned out?
Yeah.
So that kind of ruins it a little bit for me.
Yeah, I can concur with that. I can see where you're coming from, and I definitely agree with you there, where it does take away kind of from the experience.
Yeah. So kind of surprisingly, the GMS Final Four teammates, Johnny Sauter and Justin Haley, Sauter more so even, but they were pretty much non-factors
I know.
the whole night. And the interesting thing about Sauter is that he won the season opener at Daytona, and he led the point standings literally every single race, every week, consecutively until Homestead. And he doesn't win the championship.
I know.
His season has been so consistent, and then to see him not have a terrible night, but just really not show that competitive speed and be a threat to win was almost shocking.
Yeah, and I think coming into it too, if I remember correctly,
I
it
think
was a
we
little
both
while
picked
back.
Sauter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and looking at this here, looking at the standings, obviously Moffitt won. Haley placed 8th, and Sauter placed 12th. So again, like you said, not terrible overall, but when you're so consistent and you kind of drop the ball there, I mean, that's the one time that you can't afford to be inconsistent. So it was interesting watching the race, taking in the race when they, like you said, they weren't even factors into really the outcome.
Yeah, so the factors in the outcome were Noah Gragson and Brett Moffitt, the two Toyota drivers. Gragson, of course, for Kyle Busch Motorsports, Moffitt for Hattori Racing Enterprises. And it was Brett Moffitt who pulled away at the end, closed the deal, ended up winning the race and the championship. So Hattori Racing Enterprises are now Truck Series champions after midseason, basically coming out before Chicago and saying, yeah, we're not sure we have the funding to go to the next race. Well, they get sponsorship for Chicago. They go out and win Chicago, and now they're truck champions.
Unbelievable. Cinderella story. Yeah, I mean, a textbook Cinderella story.
Yeah, I think the media in Japan were kind of going crazy, too, for Hattori being the first Japanese-born owner to win a NASCAR championship.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so very, very cool story for that
yeah, very historic.
small team. Moffitt doesn't have any 2019 plans set in stone, and neither does the team. I see no reason to break them up. I also think Moffitt could move back up if there's a ride available. And here's something a lot of people forget. Brett Moffitt was the 2015 Cup Series Rookie of the Year.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was driving for Front Row and a combination. He was an MWR development driver at the time. But this was a year where there wasn't a lot of competition in the rookie standings, and he ran the majority of the races, ran for Cup points, and the stat book shows him as Cup Rookie of the Year.
Wow.
And that was 3 years ago now. So I think this truck championship proves that he has what it takes to compete. He could certainly at least move up to Xfinity. But again, there's that sponsorship issue. If you don't have that money, then it makes it a lot tougher to find a ride.
And again, it kind of comes full circle here to the theme of we're having, you know, the best drivers, the best athletes involved in this sport. Not sure if they're going to compete because of monetary issues. It's ridiculous, but
got to find a way to bring the costs down for running these cars.
Seriously, it's getting out of control.
All right, yeah, so congratulations to Moffitt and his team. So moving on to the Xfinity race, and again, very clean.
Yeah.
Only 2 cautions were for the stage breaks, so again, you wonder what might have been had the whole race been able to run uninterrupted.
Mm-hmm.
But Tyler Reddick
I know.
pretty much came out of nowhere, and he had the high line down and barely brushed the wall, ran very clean, very well, very strong, take nothing away from him. But he won the race, and he was in the Final Four, so that means he's your 2018 Xfinity Series champion.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, this is another thing we've talked about. I don't know. It's like you said. I don't want to take anything away from Reddick, and
yeah, absolutely not.
He ran a very clean.
This is the format we have. This is the strategy that these guys know they have to play coming in. He did everything he needed to do. Props to him. Take absolutely nothing away from him whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm just disappointed being a Bell fan, but and again, I think we both picked Bell too for this.
Yeah,
and it's exciting to kind of see that. Reddick, again, he kind of came out of nowhere. And so, I mean, it made it not out of nowhere, but just wasn't really expecting him
Well,
to.
and I think the difference between him and Moffitt was Moffitt won a bunch of races this year.
Yeah.
Tyler Reddick won the season opener at Daytona and was honestly kind of the third car at Junior Motorsports behind Allgaier and Sadler pretty much the rest of the year. And they both missed the Final Four. Reddick squeaks in and then steals the championship at the end.
Yeah.
So, well, Matt, I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Was Tyler Reddick a deserving champion?
Um, I would say, and again, I don't want to take anything away from him, but I would say no. I think that
Is that a hard no, or is that
yeah, that's a hard no. That's a
no?
hard no. Yeah, that is. And again, I want to do it with the most respect possible. But like you said, he won, what was it, three races, two races, and then kind of hung around, stayed in the mix. But you had Chris Bell, who was just like he was
Well,
unstoppable.
and we should also point out that points mean a lot.
Mhm.
Daniel Hemrick didn't win a race all year, and I hate this argument because I feel like if you had a season-long championship, guys would use different strategies, guys would race differently, and the results would obviously be different.
Yeah.
But if you add up the points without resetting the playoffs, Daniel Hemrick was actually your champion without winning a single race.
Really?
So, but he had, I don't even know, 10 top 3 finishes. Like, he did everything but win a race this year.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and again, Matt Kenseth only won 1 race in 2003. Ryan Newman won 8.
Yeah.
If we had had a similar format to this in 2003, odds are maybe Newman would have been the champion. But I think when you look at the records 30, 40 years from now, I think Matt Kenseth's going to be remembered as being much more of a Hall of Fame level elite driver than Ryan Newman was.
Yes.
So
And
even though Kenseth only won 1 race, he still had the most points over the year. He's easily your most deserving of a championship.
Yeah, and I'm a big Ryan Newman fan, but I can get behind that. I understand.
Well, and then bouncing off of that, Matt, what do you think this Reddick's championship, and to a lesser extent Logano's, which we'll get to in a second, what does that say about the playoff format that we have right now?
I think that, in my opinion, I think that it doesn't necessarily. I don't think it's rewarding the best driver. And I know that's hard to say, and that's pretty harsh, but that's where I'm coming from. At least that's kind of my belief on it.
Yeah,
I think that
I
there
agree.
should be a change, but unfortunately, I'm not in a position to make that change.
Well, speaking of Newman, speaking of being winless, if you go back to 2014 in the Cup Series, which was the first year this format was used, for a format that places such an emphasis on winning, you win, you're in. You win the final race, you're the champion no matter what. Ryan Newman went winless in 2014 and finished second in points.
Yeah.
And if you replace Kevin Harvick with a non-playoff driver, or non-chase driver, it would have been back then, and Newman still finished second, Newman would have been a winless champion under this format.
I know. And
so if this format could certainly produce a winless champion when it places such an emphasis on winning, I don't know. I feel like there's some pretty deep flaws in the fundamental aspects of the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and I agree with you too. I think there needs to be a period of time where they can just go back and revise this, because I can see that, and I don't want to jump to this conclusion, but I can see how this might even take even more interest away from the sport and hurt the sport.
Well, I'm a big A.J. Allmendinger fan.
Okay.
And if you know Allmendinger, he drives for JTG Daugherty, very much midfield to back marker kind of team. They've gotten slowly but surely better over the years, but he's very good on road courses, and he's very good at Martinsville. So with the way the schedule is right now, let's say he wins Watkins Glen.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in the playoffs.
Yes.
Let's say he puts together a series of impressive drives. He gets through the first round without a problem. Let's say he goes out and steals a win at the Roval.
Okay.
So he's in the round of 8. Let's say he has everything go his way. He puts him a drive of his life and everything works out. He has 2 second-place finishes at Martinsville in his career. Let's say he steals a win at Martinsville. So he's in the Final 4. And then let's say it's a mid-race restart at Homestead and the other 3 championship contenders take each other out. And Allmendinger finishes 18th and he's your Monster Energy Cup Series champ. I mean, it would take a perfect storm of events for that to happen.
Yes.
But is he a worthy champion of the sport? If you look at
No, I don't know. No.
And again, very unlikely that it would happen, but it is theoretically very much possible with the way this format is right now.
Absolutely. And that's problematic, to say the least.
All right, so let's move along here into the Cup race. Actually, the first time, I believe it was the first time that all 4 championship contenders made up the top 4, finished 1, 2, 3, 4 in the race.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Joey Logano, again, kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
We talked all about the big 3. The big 3 versus Logano, the big three and me. But Joey Logano held off Martin Truex Jr. and no Cinderella story for the 78 Furniture Row Racing team out of Denver, Colorado. It's Joey Logano who captures the championship.
I know. And I'm still in shock over it. You know, like you said, we were talking about the big three, and I didn't see Logano winning at all. Like, I didn't think I would have given him 10% chance, maybe. Probably being a little generous there. And so I think it's great for him. I think that, you know, the fact that he was able to win is phenomenal. But for me, I was kind of blown away.
Well, I saw a lot of stuff on social media. I mean, Logano's not the most popular driver in the sport. Got into it with Matt Kenseth a few years ago. Kenseth's very popular. Truex is very popular. Of course, they had their deal at Martinsville.
Yes.
But I think a lot of fans finally, after a driver they don't like winning the championship, kind of stealing the championship, I think that kind of got them to wake up. You have to remember, folks, Kyle Busch won the championship in 2015, literally missing the first 35% of the season. So
that's right.
This format has allowed for, and of course they gave him a waiver, and again, nothing taken away from him. Kyle Busch completed one of the most impressive comebacks I've ever seen in sports because he had to get in the top 30. He had to win a race. You know, there was a lot of stuff he had to do, but the format let him do it. And I mean, what other motorsport in the world could you miss the first third of a season and still be eligible mathematically to come through with a championship?
There is none. There isn't. And that's, like you said, and again, I feel like we keep saying there's nothing to take away from him there, but it does seem a little bit odd, I guess, a little uncharacteristic. And I'm going to say it again, I think that it's just very problematic.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't see the playoffs going anywhere anytime soon.
No, I don't either. Maybe as much as I would like there to be, rule implementations and revisions, I don't think it's going to happen.
All right, so let's move on to Formula One at Abu Dhabi, which took place the week after the NASCAR Championships. And I've got to be honest, I really don't have a whole lot to say about this race. Lewis Hamilton won. Big surprise.
Standard.
73rd win. So I guess we'll talk about Hamilton for a little bit. He's now 18 wins away from Michael Schumacher and 2 championships.
Yeah.
So if you look at the regulations not changing until 2021, that gives him 2 seasons. If he's been averaging about 10 a year, he needs 9 wins each of the next 2 years and 2 championships, and he'll tie Schumacher in both statistical categories.
Yeah. I think it's very possible. I think it's going to happen. And my picks weren't that great coming into the Homestead here, but I really do believe that he's going to
kind of fitting that Hamilton won the final race. Vettel finished second in the final race. And again, it's very possible Esteban Ocon could be his teammate in 2020, but Bottas will be back for 2019, and Bottas didn't win a race this year.
I know.
So unless Bottas can find, and he won 3 races last year, so that speed's been there, but it was lacking this year, and if he can't figure anything out, that's one fewer car. I mean, if Mercedes have the best car, then it leaves the door wide open for him to continue racking up those wins. I think it's also had people realize, just how good Nico Rosberg was.
Yes.
Because now that we see, Hamilton's on a whole nother level and Bottas is struggling to keep up with him, the fact that Rosberg managed to give him a run for his money while they were teammates and ended up beating him one year really speaks to his talent as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. It says a lot. It really does. It really does. I mean, in this race, too, we had Will Smith making several cameo appearances.
Yeah, so this was Will Smith's, we'll play the clip here for you guys. This was Will Smith's message to Lewis Hamilton after he clinched the championship in Mexico.
Hey, Lewis, congrats, man. That's how you do it, baby. Just like I taught you. That's how you do it. Just like that. That's how you supposed to drive.
So I guess there you have it. Will Smith taught Lewis Hamilton everything he knows.
Yeah. I'm not shocked.
Yeah. Well, and so Smith was in the paddock at Abu Dhabi, and they got him in a Mercedes fire suit and everything. They filmed a little skit right before the race where he was tying Lewis up in a chair and was going to sneak into the car himself. So you can check out that video if you want. But yeah, that was honestly probably the most exciting part of this race.
Agreed. Agreed. It was. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was. It was not very eventful, but good to see Will Smith, I guess, getting involved there.
And Fernando Alonso ends his career just outside the points with an 11th place finish. It was kind of funny to hear them talking on the radio where his engineers were telling him, okay, we got a point on the line here in 10th. We need you to push for 10th. And Alonso's like, I have 1,800 points. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. But yeah, just a shame that he spent the last few years of his career in a really uncompetitive car.
I know. It is. Obviously, he's had a good run and everything, but it is frustrating when you reflect on the way that it ended, and it ended in such a, I don't want to say frustrating again, but in such a frustrating way. So, my heart goes out to Alonso. Yeah.
All right, well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this edition of the Photo Finish. We have one more show next week, and during that time,
that's right.
we'll recap the Johnson-Alonso seat swap, and also all the silly season news that's broken since then. Kurt Busch was finally confirmed Chip Ganassi today, just to put that out there, but I think we were all expecting that, all knew that was coming.
I didn't know it had happened, but...
Yeah, so that was made official today as well, and who knows, maybe Chip could even let Kurt run the double one more time.
I hope so.
At Indianapolis as well. He hasn't ruled that out either. So stay tuned now for Robert and Matt on the Comic Collision. For Matt Cole, I'm Ben Schneider, and we will see you for one final show next week.
Have a good night.